Good morning, everybody. Jim Feist and Hank Goldberg here in Las Vegas. Hank, we're down to the playoffs. It's the most exciting time of the year for college and pro football. We got a championship game with Clemson and LSU, and we got 4 wild card games going this weekend, Saturday and Sunday, 2 each.
Yeah, it's good. Bowl season's about over, except for the big game a week from Monday. And I saw some pretty good football in the last few days. I'm doing very well in college basketball. For those of people who follow us on your service would find out, I've given them nothing but winners, college basketball.
Well, that's great. Well, that's what we're into now, college hoops. And that'll carry us through until the baseball season starts. And, of course, the NBA playoffs.
This weekend is when the conference schedules begin. And there's a couple of decent games. Duke is at the University of Miami. They're playing tomorrow. Creighton, I'll tell you, Creighton is a team that can really score, and I've been doing very well with them. And I had a good week betting against San Francisco. They got beat a couple of times this week out west. Notre Dame Syracuse will be a good game tomorrow. Auburn Mississippi State, that's a good game. And I guess Arizona State, Arizona, that's a good competitive game too. Duke Miami is tomorrow afternoon. Will compete with the football game. And Alabama, Florida. So there's a lot of good matchups to start off with this weekend.
Yeah, we got a game tonight with number 5 Ohio State playing at home against Wisconsin. That game opened 10.5. It's down to 7. That's a big move for a. Of course, I know it's a conference game. Wisconsin's going to come hard to come to play, but that is a big line movement.
Georgetown, Seton Hall.
Yeah,
Seton Hall got their star player back. He wasn't supposed to play the other night, Powell, and he did play, and Seton Hall won. So with Powell, they're a different team.
Yeah, that line opened 5, and it's up to 6 or 6.5 tonight. That's probably one of the reasons. I mean, Georgetown has a good record, 10-4, but Seton Hall's, like you said, a different team when they got their full complement.
Georgetown does not do well against the better teams. They don't have that good a team.
Anything you want to talk about in the wild card games?
One other tip for people. College at Charleston has a very good basketball team, and they've been a good play consistently.
You're right about that. They have been. They did it again last night, too. Wild card games start on Saturday. We got the AFC, and then on the Sunday we got the NFC. Any of those games you want to bring up? There's a lot of injury issues out there, especially for Seattle and Philadelphia.
Let's talk tomorrow first. There's going to be some bad weather in Boston. I don't know who that favors. Probably favors New England. But it's supposed to rain turning to snow as the evening goes on. And the game is being played at night there. And, you know, I don't know how Tannehill will do in that weather. But I do know that New England can play in that weather, but I don't know that New England is that good. I'll give you a stat. Tannehill in 10 games has as many touchdown passes as Brady does for the whole season.
Wow. That, well, it could be, if the weather's that bad, if it turns, I'm looking at the forecast right now, you're right. That could be really bad. Maybe that might be a pretty good underplay for people to look at.
Well, New England is depending on its defense. They don't score a lot. I thought it was a pretty good underplay to start with, without the bad weather. But the number will come down when people see what the weather is going to be. So they might make adjustments down on the total. It might make it unplayable.
Yeah, you're right. Well, if the weather is bad in New England, I'm wondering what the weather in Philadelphia will look like on the next day, because they're in the same.
It's supposed to be clear on Sunday.
Yeah, I'm looking here. It doesn't. There's this later in the day. It looks like maybe some showers, maybe, but the wind factor is 16, 15, then drops off at night down to 7 and 4.
Weather won't bother Seattle. They're used to that.
Well, the Philadelphia and Seattle game, there's a ton of injuries on both sides of that game. Clowney might come back. There's some of the defensive players for Seattle look like they're coming back. Of course,
they got a couple of guys back last week. You know, their best player. It's interesting that he already had a comment. You know, their linebacker, who's probably the best defensive player on the field, when they were talking about all these second-rate players for Philadelphia who stepped up last week, and he said, "Oh, bring him on." He's not worried about him. The interesting thing is Seattle has a better record against tougher competition. Philadelphia has been running up its record against the terrible, I would say, probably the worst division in the history of that conference. You know, they've been beating teams like, last week, Giants had them tied going in the fourth quarter. Philadelphia didn't win because of its offense. They won on a bad snap in special teams. And Seattle, Homer, who I know from the University of Miami, he was a very good back, played very well last week, particularly in the second half.
Sure did.
And he'll have although, the one element that's good about the Philadelphia defense right now is their run defense. But if you look, they didn't do that well against the Giants last week. And if you look at their defense, their secondary has 3 starters out, 2 linebackers. They don't have an ability to get to the passer. On offense, they're missing 3 wide receivers, their top 3 running backs, 2 offensive linemen. The tackle Johnson says he's going to play, but I don't know how good he's going to be. They lost their Pro Bowl guard, and Ertz says he's going to play through his injuries. They're a mess.
Yeah, they're really
And Seattle comes in, and the important thing is that, while Russell Wilson has not played very well for the last month, he did play well in the second half last week. And they could very well not be playing this week if they had not messed up the last 22 seconds of the game against San Francisco, which is a far tougher team than anybody that Philadelphia has played against. I'm going to give you a couple of stats that people might be interested in. First of all, if you look it up for the last few years, visiting teams have a terrific record in this first round. Last year, visiting teams were 3-1. This has been a trend for the last few years, that the visiting teams, for whatever reason, have done very well in the wild card round. Secondly, teams that are getting 1.5 to 3 points since 1978 are 35-20 against the number.
Wow.
There is no significant trend anywhere else, except for that, as far as records go. I will say this: Seattle is 7-1 on the road this year, and New England is 4-4 since November 1st, and has only covered 3 games since November 1st. They are not a great team. This is not your daddy's favorite New England team.
No. And to support what you said, Hank, about the Philadelphia-Seattle game, Seattle has played, according to strength of schedule, the toughest schedule this year. Some people say it might be the second toughest schedule, but 1 or 2. And Philadelphia has played the weakest schedule, the 32nd in the league. So you have the number 1 versus the number 2, or 32, I should say. That's a big difference. And like you said, Seattle has played in the NFC West, and Philadelphia has played in the NFC East, which is one is the toughest division versus the weakest division. Big difference. That's some great information, Hank. You've done your homework, as you usually do. So this is going to be a big week. I'm looking forward to it. I'm excited about it. Happy New Year to everybody out there. If you haven't,
well, we didn't talk about the Minnesota game. Minnesota going into New Orleans, and right now New Orleans, as I said on the ESPN show, they're known for their hot food and their hot offense. And right now, Drew Brees in his last, I'll just give you some numbers there real quick. In the last 4 weeks, Brees has 15 touchdown passes and no interceptions. His wide receiver, Thomas, has broken a record with 149 receptions and over 1,500 yards. But it's not just him. They have a tight end who has 6 touchdown passes, and they also have the all-purpose guy who has 5 touchdowns right now. So, and Kamara in the last 4 weeks has 1 touchdown per game. Minnesota comes in there in the last 4 weeks, giving up 29 points per game on defense. Something has happened to that defense that's not right. And, you know, they rested everybody last week, and they're totally dependent on their running game.
Very interesting. There's going to be a lot of money pouring in on these games today, and
well, the number, for some reason, has dropped a little bit on the New Orleans game. The money, a little bit of money is shown for Minnesota, and I can't answer the question as to why, because I think New Orleans has a little bit of a grudge because of the way they lost the last 2 years.
Yeah,
and they could be the best team in that conference.
It's going to be a war. I mean, I'd love to see New Orleans play San Francisco in the championship game for the NFC. That would be awesome. That'd be a great game. Well, this is going to be awesome information, Hank. A lot of people in Minnesota are saying that the ownership isn't very happy with the way Zimmer has run that team. I don't know if they're rumors or fact or not, but that's what you hear. And
he's coaching for, I'll tell you, he's coaching for his job this weekend.
Okay. So they are. So, I mean, if you're saying that, it must be true. He hasn't, he had a really good record a few years ago. He had, and then they went out and they got Cousins, and they paid Cousins a lot of money. It just hasn't paid off. And
well, he played pretty well for most of this year, except for the primetime game, where he never plays well. But Cousins is not the issue with that team. They have tremendous talent on that club. They're kind of like Dallas in a way, and that their defense, as I pointed out, has not played very well over the last month, and their defense was supposed to be loaded. And, of course, his top 2 running backs got hurt and he held them out last week, and they will play this week. But he's, in a way, responsible after they set up the offense for Cousins and did a good job by letting him roll out a lot, which and let him depend on the running game. He's afraid in big games to give him the ball, and he has apparently teed off the ownership there with the way he has coached his team. Where particularly in the Green Bay game a couple of weeks ago, where they felt they should have won that game and they got out-coached, and that's been the issue. And then the Bears beat them last week, so they come in here not playing strong, entering the playoffs, and it's kind of like the Houston, who we didn't mention. Houston is 1-3 under O'Brien in playoff games. And he's kind of in the same spot right now that the Cincinnati coach was in. He's got to start winning these playoff games or he's going to be gone. So here are teams that are underperforming at the worst time of year. And, these owners are not going to be too patient with them.
No, you're right about that. Well, J.J. Watt's supposed to come back for Houston this week. If he's in good shape, that will help their defense for sure.
Yeah,
he is
but their secondary is not good.
No,
and their offense is not playing very consistently right now.
What do you hear about Will Fuller? Is he for the wide receiver for Houston?
He's questionable.
Okay.
But Watson really misses him.
Well, yeah, it spreads the field out when they have those two wide receivers. Well, three wide receivers because they got Styles as well. And, that makes a big difference. But if... but
they're going up against the second-ranked defense in the league. And among their strengths is White, who is a terrific shutdown corner. And if Fuller doesn't play, White will take on Hopkins, and that's a big plus for Buffalo.
What do you think about the quarterback matchup? The Buffalo quarterback this will be his first playoff game, and
yep.
He's a gritty guy and he plays hard. I'm really impressed by him, but his passing is a little bit suspect at times.
Well, he's got two good receivers who have come along, Beasley being one and Brown being the other. Those two guys can play and they can get open. And Buffalo is going to go after the Houston secondary with those two guys. Look for that to happen. I got connections in Buffalo. I can tell you that's going to happen.
Hank, you got connections everywhere. Thanks for the great information. Anything else you want to add before we sign off?
No, I guess not. It's a good time of year. Playoffs are fun, and it's a shame that the weather's not going to be good in New England, but that's happened a lot in the past. I was at the snowplow game when Shula really lost it. When Fairbanks was coaching in New England, and they brought that snowplow out on the field when New England was going to kick a field goal, and plowed the area so that they could successfully kick a field goal to beat Miami.
Oh,
Shula went nuts. And by the way, Shula will be 90 years old tomorrow.
Wow. Well, not to bring up bad subjects, but NBA lost one of their former leaders, and Mr. Stern.
Yep. Good friend of mine.
Yeah, that was terrible.
He and I got to be friends a long time ago, and he was from Teaneck, New Jersey, and I used to date the mayor's daughter, who was a classmate of his in high school, and we talked frequently. Every time I would talk to him, he'd ask me, "Hey, have you talked to Beth?" I said, "No, we don't speak anymore." And but we both knew the former mayor of Teaneck very well, and we had friends in common. And he was always very nice to me, and he was a brilliant guy and a lot of fun, and as nice a man as you would want. I don't think anybody ever disliked him, and he was probably outside of Pete Rozelle, the most significant commissioner of our time. By the way, Paul Tagliabue didn't make the finals for the contributors of the Hall, and that's a disgrace. Too many sports writers didn't like Tagliabue for some reason, and they have not voted him in. He should be in the NFL Hall of Fame.
I agree with
all the money these guys are making right now came about because of Tagliabue's management, and that's disgusting.
Yeah, they easily forget. And he was great, and he does belong. And then in baseball, we lost a pretty famous guy in Don Larson, the only perfect game in the World Series. He was 90 years old, passed away. So there's significant losses to the world of sports. But may they rest in peace. And in closing, Hank, great success this year. And continued success with your college basketball picks. And have a great weekend. We'll talk again Monday.
Okay, you too, Jim. All the best to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Hank. Bye-bye. Yeah, go to jimfeist.com for Hank's plays and mine. We'll have a full card of action in college and pro NBA and college basketball and the NFL. And we will have selections on the remaining bowl games as well. So thank you for listening. We'll talk to you soon.